like to welcome Scott Phelps to the stage once again. His topic, helping youth embrace the success sequence.
At session 4, let's take a look. The Success Sequence program, the positive alternative to sex education. Now, sometimes if I had a little bit more time, I start off with the problem of sex education. I could spend, our whole time talking about and showing you slides about how bad it is out there. My guess is you probably know that already, and that's why you're here today. But what you may not know is that Planned Parenthood is not only the largest provider of abortions in America, they are also the largest provider of sex education programs in America. And that the standard default health education slash sex education program across the country is largely a Planned Parenthood type program. And so what we want to do is go to schools and not stand out in front with a sign saying, stop giving condoms to our kids. I'm not against that if you want to do that, but that's just not what we do. What we do is provide schools with an alternative. Here's a better way to do it. And the way that we have packaged our program is around the concepts of the success sequence, which beautifully fit the message of abstinence until marriage. You're going to see how the success sequence envelops that in a beautiful way and how we're able to present this to parents, churches, schools, and so forth. All right, so the positive alternative to sex education. And I would say that the whole point of our ministry is solutions focused, right? We could whine all day long about what's happening in our culture, or we can, roll up our sleeves and get to work and work on fixing it. And that's what we're all about. We're about fixing the problem. So what we want to do to fix the problem is not just complain about the bad, but offer and provide the good. And so that's what we're all about. We very much value and need the Illinois Family Institute to call out the bad, but then we've got to come in the other door and say, here's something good. Right, David? Amen. And so it's an important partnership. We need both. We can't all do everything, right? But you can do what you do really, really well, and we do what we do really, really well. All right. So, positive alternative. The Success Sequence program teaches youth the optimal pathway for future success with a clear emphasis on the objective benefits of reserving all sexual activity and childbearing for marriage. So that is the message of the success sequence. The first part, the optimal pathway for future success, is what the success sequence is, which we'll get to in just a moment. And then we are going to make a very clear emphasis in our program on why reserving all sexual activity and childbearing for marriage is going to be good for you. It's healthy. It's the way that opens up opportunities for you in the future. And so that is at the heart of the success sequence. All right. So here's a report done by Wendy Wang and Brad Wilcox several years back called the Millennial Success Sequence. And as I said, we rely on this work very much. And you will see in this report, what they did is they took the concept of the success sequence and then they applied it to the millennial generation to sort of get a sense of where we're at today. So here's a Wall Street Journal article on that report. The sequence is the secret to success. And the Wall Street Journal was talking about the report that they did. What is the success sequence? Well, when I was a kid, I knew the jump rope rhyme growing up as a kid, right? Johnny and Mary sitting in a tree, K-I-S-S-I-N-G. First comes love, then comes success sequence. The researchers at the Institute for Family Studies, American Enterprise Institute, the Brookings Institute, they've come out with these wonderful reports that goes something like this. First comes love, then comes marriage, then comes baby and the baby. Now, although I knew that at 5 years old, kids today who are growing up into young adults, it's a foreign concept. It's a foreign concept. Specifically, the success sequence as it's codified by the think tanks goes something like this. If we can help young people get an education, high school, college, GED, just get an education, get a diploma, if we can help them do that, And then help them get a job. If they can figure out how to be self-sufficient, not dependent upon their parents or the government or welfare, or any kind of dependency, they're self-sufficient. They get a job. Students who get an education, get a job, and then marry before having children tend to be successful individuals. They tend not to fall below the poverty line, end up on food stamps or welfare. They tend to be able to form a healthy future marriage and family. And so this is what has been, as I said, codified by the think tanks as the success sequence. And so this is understanding what it is. Now, as we apply it to the millennial generation, as Brad did here, what you find is in that light blue, the millennials are not doing so well here. That you've got about 55% of the millennials that did not follow the sequence, that they had the child either before marriage or they are still unmarried. So take the 55 and break it down. 25% had the child before marriage, and then 30% who had the child are still unmarried. So not looking too good for the millennials on that score. Then they compared it with the boomers here, and you can see a sharp drop-off from about 2/3 of boomers to 40% of millennials that waited to have the baby until marriage. And now I wish they had the silent generation underneath the boomers, because I think you'd see that darker blue extending out even further, right? So you'd have a larger group there. All right. Now, here is one of the things that I think is quite fascinating. You look at the economic benefits of the success sequence, and again, of those 3 steps, education, work, and marry before having child, it's that number 3 that's really the secret sauce. That's the main point of the success sequence. And that's what we're trying to help young people understand is, and not just wait until marriage to have the baby, but reserving all sexual activity and childbearing for marriage. Those 2 things go together. The only sure way to save childbearing for marriage is through abstinence by waiting until marriage. So we make that point very clear. So those who follow that pattern, look at the inverse relationship of income. You see the 50% at the top on the left and the 47 dark blue in the bottom below. There's a complete inversion in the income brackets of those who waited and those who did. And again, it makes sense, doesn't it? It just makes sense that if you wait, have the baby after you're in a marriage relationship, you're going to be in a much better situation. All right? I remember one time I was on a radio program, and we were talking about the subject of abortion came up. And that's how I got into this in the first place, was trying to save the babies, and realized that 85% of abortions occur outside of a marriage relationship. So if we can encourage marriage, we'll reduce the abortion rates. And someone earlier had called up and said something like, at the time, they said there's 1.2 million unwanted, pregnancies, unwanted babies in the world, or whatever, what are you going to do? And the idea was, of course, you kill them, abortion. So that's why, because they're unwanted. And I said, well, the reason this person thinks that there's 1.2 million so-called unwanted babies is because babies are supposed to be born into a cradle, and the cradle is called marriage. And so the answer to the problem of 1.2 so-called unmarried babies isn't to kill the babies, it's to build more cradles. And so what we're about is cradle building, right? We want to form more healthy, stable marriages for those babies to be born into. We think that's the best solution to the abortion problem. All right, I got off on something there. Okay, it's okay. Oops. Now, one thing that's interesting is here's the American Enterprise Institute doing a report on the success sequence, where they surveyed a broad swath of the public and found out that, hey, people are for this. When you explain what the success sequence is, generally people are like, you should be teaching that to our kids. And so let's see here. Here they looked at parents on the right, and then just general all Americans on the left. And those top 2 bars represent, 70 to 80% of the population, whether they're parents or not parents. Everybody, 80% of the people are like, yeah, do that, that makes sense. Well, then they looked at it generationally, said, well, let's see what the kids think and what the older people think. And so again, if you look on the left, Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, boomers, there's your silent generation. Then look at the right, the 2 blue bars on the right, boom, wow. You've still got, 80-ish plus % of consistently across generations, that when you lay out what the success sequence is, they're like, yeah, do that. So it's exciting to see that regardless of the generation, that the strong support for teaching the success. And look at the bottom one, the silent generation. Let's call them the wise ones, okay? Let's call them the wise ones. The dark blue on the bottom right, 50s, they're like, yeah, teach this. All right? So very important. So that was whether they're parents, and then generationally it's consistent. And then also politically, whether they're Democrat, Independent, Republican, liberal, moderate, conservative. You can see that, again, the blue is the good. A lot of support for teaching the success sequence. So what we want to do is go to schools, and we do go to schools and say, hey, listen, here's something that's really, sex education is controversial, and it should be. So stop it, knock it off. Here's something you can do that's not controversial that people think is a really good idea. And you know why? Because it is a good idea. So I think that's really, really important. Okay, so the three unsustainable trends that we see in our work, the reason I say the three trends that animate our work are the increasing non-marital birth rate, the declining marriage rate, and the declining fertility rate. These are the three things. If you look at this chart, marriage in decline, you can see what I've done is I've highlighted some key time periods. Here you see the Depression in 1932, and then the baby boom. What caused the baby boom, 1946? End of the war. So end of the war, 1945, 9 months later, kaboom, right? So there's your baby boom, 1946, after the end of World War II. And then Woodstock, 1969, sex and drugs and rock and roll. You don't need to be married anymore. You just get yourself some contraception. You have sex with a whole bunch of people. It'll be fabulous. What could go wrong? But look at post-Woodstock. Look at post-sexual revolution, what has happened to the marriage rates in the United States. They've gone off a cliff. And so this is of great concern. So I'm talking about the three trends that animate our work. One is we're very concerned about the declining marriage rate. I think that's really important for us to recognize and be aware of and see. And I call these unsustainable trends. Like, you just can't keep going this way. You can't keep having marriage rates declining in this way. At some point, you're going to be, up a river without a paddle, if we're not there already. So it's not a trend that is sustainable. It's got to be dealt with. It's got to be fixed. And we're proposing that teaching young people the success sequence is the best way to fix the problem. All right. Now, here's a graph that goes to the second of our unsustainable trends. This can't keep going. Look at this. Now, again, 1969 Woodstock is the beginning of the explosion of the non-marital birth rate. Today in the United States, 40% of American children born outside the context of a marriage relationship. Wasn't always that way. In fact, look at the stability, 1940, 50, 60, and then boom, sexual revolution, Woodstock, here we go, off the charts. There you are. And our concern, coming back to sex education, is what I believe sex education is nothing more than a codification of the sexual revolution. That what we're teaching in American schools is what the sexual revolution was. Here's all the different types of contraception you can use, because we know that you're going to be having the sex, So here's all the different kinds of contraception that you can use, and there's no talk about marriage. I was on a TV show with this lady out in LA. It was a TV show called The Doctors, and it was a sex ed lady, and we were debating back and forth. And I said, look, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know of a single sex education program in America that will even give kids the option of waiting until marriage. And do you know what she said? Yeah, no, we don't teach that. Exactly. So you've got sex education across American schools teaching kids about contraception, and there's no message. I don't mean it's a bad message about marriage. There's no message about marriage. Forget about it. It's just not there. And so we seek to fill that void. We think it's really necessary, right? And so if you look at this graph, it highlights the problem of the sexual revolution starting in the 60s, in the 1960s. At my training seminars, I always pull out this article that Brad wrote in 2008, And I quote from it because it goes to this point. So after I explain that the sexual revolution is the heart of this problem, I say that's not me talking, that's the smart people. So here's the article from Brad in 2008. He says, listen, over the course of the last 40 years, more children have been born and reared outside of a married home, at least in part because the sexual revolution undercut the norm of premarital sexual abstinence. Most scholars who have studied the nation's recent retreat from marriage over the last 4 decades agree that the sexual revolution played an important role in fueling this retreat. Now watch who Brad quotes here. Dr. George Akerlof, a Nobel Prize-winning economist at the University of California, Berkeley, not a right-wing think tank. Dr. George Akerlof, a Nobel Prize-winning economist at the University of California, Berkeley, argues that the sexual revolution, aided in part by widespread contraception, fueled the dramatic increase in premarital sex and reduced the normative imperative that men should take responsibility for the children they help bring into the world by marrying. These two developments, in turn, led to dramatic increases in non-marital childbearing. Hello. So here's Brad Wilcox, University of Virginia, George Akerlof, University of Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley, saying that the sexual revolution, aided by widespread contraception, led to dramatic increases in non-marital childbearing, and that's exactly what we're teaching in our schools. Use contraception, no mention, no relationship. Sex has no relationship to marriage. It's not even brought up. It's not a topic. It's not a thing. In fact, I had a school in this area reach out to me a few years ago, and they said, would you, we like your program, it's pretty good, except there's this thing where it talks about marriage. And they said, could you do this? Could you change where it says marriage to long-term committed relationship? Because we really want to use your program, but we can't, because, marriage. And so, so I emailed the person back and I said, first of all, I didn't say no. I emailed the person back and I said, all of our material is based on research and data, and it's reviewed by the Federal Department of Health and Human Services. In fact, we're just up for review again. They constantly look over our stuff. And so do me a favor. Would you send me the research that supports the change that you want us to make? We'll be happy to review that. Did I get an answer? There isn't an answer. First of all, you can't even define it. You can't define it. If I say, save sex until you're in a long-term committed relationship, what is that? I'm serious. What is that? If I had you each take out a pen and write down a definition for long-term committed relationship, how many definitions would I get? How many people are here today, right? And look, you have to understand high school years are like dog years anyway, right? So if we've been going out for 6 months, long term, are you kidding me? Are you kidding? 1 year, we're getting married. I mean, if I tell kids that abstinence is saving sex for a long-term mutually monogamous committed relationship, as people want to say, what are they going to say? Oh yeah, we've got that. Yeah, we've been going 3 months. We've been going out. Yeah. We're tight like that. Right? I'm serious. So in other words, you've just green-lighted them. You just told them you're good to go. This is why the marriage component is such a critical part of the message. Oh, I was reading something. Reduce the normative imperative. Men should take responsibility for the children they help bring into the world by marrying. Furthermore, Dr. Akerlof concludes that the sexual revolution played an important role in the nation's recent retreat from marriage over the last 4 decades and is indirectly responsible for the social consequences of that retreat. In his words, quote, just at the time about 1970, the permanent cure to poverty seems to be on the horizon, and just at the time that women had obtained the tools to control the number and timing of their children, single motherhood and the feminization of poverty began their long and steady rise. Furthermore, he thinks the retreat from marriage, caused in part by the sexual revolution, was also implicated in the crime shock and the substance abuse shock of the 70s and the 80s. Indeed, a number of other studies find that the retreat from marriage is strongly linked to increases in child poverty, crime, and substance abuse since the 1960s. The bottom line, Brad concludes, is this. The erosion of the norm of premarital sexual abstinence, both in belief and behavior, appears to have played an important role in the weakening of American family life and, in turn, some of the nation's most pressing social problems. Thus, the norm that sex should be reserved for marriage would seem to increase the likelihood that any individual could enjoy a strong and satisfying family life. Furthermore, increased public support for such a norm would seem likely to foster happier and healthier families in the United States as a whole. Can I get an amen? Amen. Isn't that right? Isn't that right? So I think Brad just lays it out so clear that I read that at every training seminar I do because it's so clear that what you've got is when you have what let's call it the Great Divorce. When you have the divorce in the 1960s of sex and marriage, that is the sexual dysfunction that we're living in right now, right? And the way I describe it to kids a lot of times in the classroom, if I'm doing kids or even my training workshops is, we like to go camping. And we've been to some of the great campgrounds, Yellowstone, the Tetons, Yosemite. Love to go camping at some of these wonderful, beautiful places. And every time we go camping, there's always a sign up that says, campfires in designated fire pit area only, okay? Doesn't say you can't have a campfire. It's called a campfire. So it's a fire you have at camp. So it doesn't say no campfires. It says we've kind of dug down a hole and we put a bunch of rocks around it. And now, if you're going to make a fire, do it in there. And then you get your guitar, a little kumbaya, roast some marshmallows, make some s'mores. Yay! But what? But you can't just go making a campfire. You can't just go making a fire anywhere you want. You'll burn the place down. So we put up these signs. Have a campfire, but have it in the fire pit that's designed for the fire to be contained and fun and good and kumbaya. Amen. And sex within marriage is the fire in the fireplace, in the fire pit. You just go having sex anywhere you want, you'll burn the place down. We're living in a forest fire. All the sexual dysfunction in our culture today is rooted right here. The divorce of sex and marriage is hugely problematic. All right. So when I do the training seminars, and I'll ask you the same question I asked them, can we flip it around? Can we come back down the other side? Can we get the non-marital birth rate to start going down? Because there is no down here. It's plateaued, that's good, but it's not going down. Can we get it? Can we flip the graph? Can we come back down the other side? David says yes. Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, anybody else? Really? Because I'm not feeling it. Well, why do you say yes?
Sin always destroys itself. It'll reach a point where people will have enough and they'll turn back to God.
I hope we're there, Rich. I hope we're there. When I say I don't feel it, I'm being honest. I'm being honest. Like, in what is my hope that that's going to turn? Of course, I trust in the Lord. Yeah, but what's going to make it turn? So I tell my teachers the same thing I'm going to tell you. I don't see this changing unless we get serious and we wake up, knock off the nonsense, and help a new generation of American youth understand the benefits of reserving all sexual activity for marriage, what marriage is and why marriage matters and why that's good. We've got to do a much better job of educating our youth on the beauty and the value of marriage and family. That's what our work is all about. We think it's critical. We think it's critical to the cultural good and to our nation and for the glory of God. We absolutely believe that. Can it turn? It's a Herculean task, and we're up for it. We're up for it. And I hope you are too. This is important. Here's from Brad's book, Get Married. He already went over all of this, the difficulties, the challenges that kids have who don't have the benefit of a strong family foundation. And so important to realize the need that these kids have and to understand the benefits of married mom and dad. I tell people I am a horrible mother. My wife does not do the dad thing well. You hear what I'm saying? Kids need a mom, they need a dad. And that, as we said earlier today, is the way God planned it. That's God's plan, yeah. All right, let's go to this. We talked about the fertility rates. Brad mentioned this. Here's the graph. 1.6 is the latest number. I think it's 1.7 now, the latest I think I saw. But look, this is a serious number. 1.6 is a serious number. We went from, look at this, 3.6 down to 2.1, now to 1.6. There is a short video actually put out by the New York Times. I think it's called something like Demographic Winter. It's only 12 minutes. You should see it. It's interesting. The New York Times put this out, warning about the crisis of population decline. And it's really, it's a serious issue. It's one that is not on a lot of people's radar, but it needs to be on our radar because it is a serious concern. Not just nationally. This is the United States, but look at it globally. Years ago, when Russia hit 1.5, Vladimir Putin made this statement. He said, quote, "Without exaggeration, the central problem of contemporary Russia is demography, strengthening the family and increasing the birth rate." So, of all the problems as president of Russia that I see, the number one issue is the declining birth rate. And what does he say? Strengthening the family and increasing the birth rate. Why? Why? Because what's happening? What's happening? Countries are literally going extinct. I think South Korea is first up, by the way. We're at 1.6. South Korea, I should put it up here. I was speaking at a Korean church recently, so I did the research before going over there. I was shocked. It is the lowest in the world at 0.8, half of where we're at. Yes, David, I see that hand.
Just real quick, there are some nations in the world who are selling more adult diapers than baby diapers.
Thank you for that image, yes. That's another way to put it. So, it's a problem. It's a problem. So, Japan, for example, I think they're 1.3. Instead of their society being like this, they're like this. Right? A lot of older people, not a lot of younger people, so what's going to happen? And so you need to be like this, and you're like this. And so Putin understands this. In fact, in Russia, they started something called Conception Day. Maybe you've heard about this. Have you heard about this in Russia? Italy picked up on this, and they're doing it too. Conception Day. It is as it sounds. Holiday. Everybody, you go home, you make the baby. It's a thing. It's a thing. And so I used to joke around about, I was like, and then what they did is they said, we're going to have literally a national holiday to go have the baby. And we're going to give you, whoever hits 9 months to the day from Conception Day, you get a prize. And I used to joke around about, it's probably like a minivan. Then I saw a news article, it's a minivan. I was like, are you kidding me right now? Yeah, they get a minivan. So Norway is having, look, all the European countries are below us. It's a real problem. Hungary, Romania, it's a global problem. And so this is absent migration, by the way, which is one reason why Europe is maintaining its population only through dramatic mass migration. It's a problem globally. And the New York Times video brings this out. And we need to be aware of it, okay? And so now where this is going to come home is, what are we teaching our kids? Okay, what are we teaching our kids? We've been pushing contraception in schools for decades. So with contraception and abortion, where are you? Where are you? You're killing the next generation. And so it's really important to understand what it is that we're teaching our kids. Now, we have, over the years, I've been doing this 25 years now, and I started out, I wanted to save the babies, and I realized if we could help young people not be sexually active as teenagers, they wouldn't get pregnant, they wouldn't have an abortion, save the babies. But my message, as is largely still the message today in people who teach abstinence, is don't have sex because bad things can happen to you if you have sex, like pregnancy or disease. Have you heard that? Don't have the sex because bad things could happen, like pregnancy or disease. Well, what's wrong with that picture? Is pregnancy like a disease? Is pregnancy a bad thing that can happen to you? So we have changed. I have over the years, I'm constantly learning, growing, and now what we say is we are not a pregnancy prevention program. We are a pregnancy promotion program. We are pro-baby. We think that pregnancy is a good thing. We don't think pregnancy is a problem to be avoided. We think it's a hope to be cherished. So, thank you, yes. We don't think that the message to young people should be, you want to avoid getting pregnant because pregnancy is bad. What we want to say is pregnancy is not bad, it's good. It's so good, save it, protect it, preserve it for the context of a marriage relationship so that baby has the benefit of being raised by a married mom and dad. So you're not choosing abstinence because you want to avoid a bad thing like pregnancy, but rather you're understanding the beauty and the value of marriage for the nurture and care and love of that baby. And so, I'm not a big fan of that baby think it over thing where, the kid carries around the doll at school and then it goes off and you throw the thing against the wall to make it stop. I don't want to teach kids that babies are a nuisance, okay? I want to teach them that babies are amazing, wonderful, beautiful. And so we are, like my little baby. Hi, Nora, baby. My wife and I just got back from New York on Wednesday night. We were out seeing our little baby. This is actually a year ago. She's now 2. And I left my heart in New York City. Oh, that little pumpkin. Yeah, she's a cutie. Okay, back. All right. So we are pro-marriage. We are pro-pregnancy. We are pro-baby. We are pro-life. Okay? So it's a consistency of messaging, right? It's a consistency of messaging. Babies are wonderful, which means pregnancy is wonderful, which means it is not a consequence to avoid, but rather a hope to cherish. So we're going to wait for the context of marriage. So important that we understand that. Now, here's again the good news that I showed you earlier. Today's youth want to learn about marriage. That's the good news. Look at this research. I think I showed this one earlier, University of Michigan, 90%. Now, I am concerned it's dropping. It's dropping with the 87, 84. It's still very, very high, but it's on the decline. And I think a lot of this has to do with Obergefell. I think the whole problem that Obergefell raises has caused a lot of difficulty and challenges, but that's another seminar, Dave. We'll do that next time. Okay, what else have we got here? Okay, so the solution. So this is where we're at, right? So what we want to do is we want to equip and empower and help you to do this well. We want you, with our Excel program, we want you to teach your own kids the biblical values. But also then we have the Success Sequence program for the kids out there because they need this too. So at our booth, grab an Excel for your own kids, and then if you want to take some success sequence stuff for your school in your area, you can do that too. So we want to teach our own kids well with the biblical program, but then what we want to do is in the schools in our area, we want to make sure they're getting that as well. I think that's super, super important. And the only difference is in the public school program, it is the same concept. We don't have the scripture in it, but the messaging is the same. So that's how that works. See what else I've got up here to say. So first, the Excel program for you. The word excel comes from 1 Thessalonians 4, where Paul says, excel still more in your walk with the Lord. Specifically, what he means is abstaining from sexual immorality. That's where the name Excel comes from for the book. And we want to teach young people clearly from God's word what that says. And it is Genesis 37 through 50. We actually go through the narrative, through the Joseph narrative, where Potiphar's wife comes on to him. And I love this. When Potiphar's wife comes on to Joseph, he doesn't say what our kids today are taught to say. He doesn't say, well, I could get a disease, you get pregnant, could be all these problems. What does he say? You're married to somebody else. See, marriage is the standard. Marriage is the standard. You're married to Potiphar. You're not married to me. I'm not doing this. That's what we need to teach our young people. It's not about, should I wonder, am I mature enough? Am I old enough? No, none of that. Are you married? Are you married? That's what we need to teach our kids. Okay, and then we're working on a new video curriculum this year, tentatively titled Saving Love. That's the name of my book, which I never published. It's sitting on my computer. Pursuing God's plan for life, marriage, and family. And so we're putting together now a video curriculum for churches to teach these things. There are some video curriculum out there that we're not happy with, some being used in this area by churches in this area, which we think are more harmful than helpful. And we're like, oh my goodness, we've got to do something that's good for the church. So we're working on that. So everything I'm talking about today, we're working on putting that in a video curriculum for churches to be able to use. We've got the Excel program for churches, but that's more of a workbook for a classroom. We're going to do a video curriculum that's designed for churches. All right, then we've got the Success Sequence program, which is for the public schools. It's an alternative to the media messaging for youth. It's an alternative to a Planned Parenthood sex education type program. It gives them a clear message of abstinence until marriage. We've had some 2 million kids go through the programs around the country. These are schools or organizations around the country that we've been in or are in over the years. And then, what else have I got here? In Illinois, the Success Sequence program, we work with the Illinois Department of Education. Our goal is to work from the inside out. We want to equip the teachers who are already in the classroom. So as I said, next week I'm going downstate, coming back. I was in Mundelein on Thursday. We do training development for public school teachers in Illinois. They get development credits from the state of Illinois, and they come to our workshops and they teach our program in the classroom. And so since 2017, when we started this particular project, we've had that slide's old now, it's something like 54,000 in 350 schools across the state. So that's what we do. Now look at this. Does it work? Look at this research. This was a school near Knoxville, Tennessee that went through our game plan program. And look at this. The purple is before they took the program and the green is after they took the program. They didn't go through the whole program. They just went through one book of the 4 books. And look at what they said. Walking in the door, the purple, 90% of the kids walking in the door in answer to the question, I plan to save all sexual activity for marriage, 90% of the kids said no or I don't know. Okay, well, can we teach you some things? Open your workbooks, AC Green's game plan. Let's go through it, 8 chapters. And then at the end, what do we get? An exact flip, 90%. Yes, that's what I want to do. Sign me up. How do I do that? Okay? So that is a dramatic change, 90%. The big one to me is that middle bar of 67%. 2/3 of the kids walking in the door, do you plan to save all sexual activity for marriage? They're like this. They're like, I don't know. Like they don't even have a framework to understand the question. All right? So we've got some education to do here. Here's Texas, Brad. You were asking about Texas. This one blows me away because look at this one. She says around in the middle there, she says, this blows me away. 97% of the students would recommend this curriculum to other students. I'm telling you what, listen to me. You want the good news? Kids are hungry for this. The younger generation is, listen to me. They've been starved of this. They've been starved of this. And when they get to taste it, they're like, say, that's good. Can I have some more? More, please. Yeah, I think that's powerful. So I'm going to give you a sample of one of the videos that we developed. This is for public schools. This video is my favorite. It's Glenn Milburn, who used to play for the Bears. And I think this video, we got some videos with Mike Singletary, A.C. Green from the Lakers. But this video, I think, does the best job of really giving a clear picture of what our message is and how it can benefit young people. It's about 4 minutes, and schools can show this in the classroom to help young people visualize and see. We just think, look, of all the media that our kids are drinking in, as I said earlier, how much of it communicates to our kids the beauty and the value of reserving all sexual activity for the context of marriage? How much of it? And the answer is almost none. And so what we wanted is we wanted to give kids good, positive vision, realistic vision of what it can be. And this video by Glenn Milburn, I think, does just that. So I think we'll do that, and then I'll come back up, and if you have a couple questions, we'll do that, and then we'll let the people go. Okay, go.
I remember when I was 8 years old, I went to an NFL game and I saw professional athletes running around on the field, and I thought for a flashing moment, I want to be one of these guys. I grew up here in Los Angeles, and football was one of those sports that I gravitated to. I understood at an early age that to be the best athlete, to have a goal of being a professional athlete one day, I would have to make certain decisions that were going to allow me to focus on that goal. Eating the right things, training a certain way, following directions. I felt the same thing if I wanted to have an A-plus marriage one day and have a healthy family. I would have to do the same things. I would have to eliminate the distractions and prepare myself to be the best Glenn Milburn that I could be for that future Mrs. Milburn. Those were the lessons that I learned in high school that really allowed me to be successful my senior year. From the first touch of that season, I ran a 90-yard touchdown, and literally out of nowhere, I ended up having a tremendous year. I became recruited by colleges, and so I now had an opportunity to really make some of the dreams I had come true. I went to Stanford University, and I began to hear the rumblings that I put myself in a position where professional teams were interested in looking at me as a top draft pick. I didn't have an idea of which team was going to pick me, but I had done the work that I needed to do. Draft day was an amazing experience. It was the Denver Broncos calling and saying, how would you like to be a Denver Bronco? And when you get that call, it was the culmination of that moment of when I was an 8-year-old kid who had this dream, and then as a 21-year-old, seeing the realization of that dream. All of that coming to that moment to where now you're a member of an exclusive fraternity called the NFL. The early years of my NFL career were like a whirlwind. And I remember hearing from one of the players who I really respected. And he said this quote to me. He said, "Do not trade in what you want most for what you want for the moment." And that quote always stuck in my mind. And I said, if anything, I want to be like him. So many times, it's easy to take the thing that fulfills you for the short term. And so for me, it was making those decisions. If I wanted to have a successful performance on the field, I had to eat the right things. I had to train the right way. In my relationships, if I wanted to have the marriage that I always wanted, to have a lasting, successful marriage, I had to be someone that could be trustworthy, to be honest, to be someone that someone would say, you know what, I believe this person is somebody that I would want to spend the rest of my life with. Choosing not to date and choosing abstinence in particular was something that was important for me. In order to be successful at that, I needed to surround myself with other teammates that were like-minded. When things were tough, I had my teammates to lift me up and to really hold me accountable. So towards the end of my NFL career, I ended up attending a conference in Austin, Texas. And that's where I saw this girl. She was fresh out of college and starting her professional track and field career. We both shared very similar values and goals and wanted the same thing out of life. We had both made a decision to remain abstinent. And that was important because we wanted to get to know each other and not have the distractions and the pressures that sometimes that has on relationships. We were able to talk about our lives, what was important to us, how we wanted our futures to look like. In my mind, I felt this is the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. And she felt the same way. Toy and I would be married in May of 2000. I really am very fortunate and blessed to have the life that I have and have the wife that I have and have the children that I have. We would have never have had that opportunity if we wouldn't have made the decision to remain abstinent early in life. Reflecting back to what I was told, do not trade in what you want most for what you want for the moment. If I would have went for the short-term gratification, I wouldn't have the long-term joy and the long-term memories and the long-term experience that I have now, living a life that is a cherished life. So thankful.
Isn't that sweet? It's just a beautiful picture to say to kids, hey, this is what we're talking about, okay? This is what we're talking about.
For young people who have not followed the success,
Yes.
they've made some mistakes.
Yes.
Now they feel like they can't overcome that.
Romans 1:8, there is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus, for the law of the Spirit of life in Christ has set you free from the law of sin and death. And so there is grace, there is renewal. And if you have not lived the life that you know God planned out for you, his arms are wide open, filled with grace, filled with mercy. And what is the best message, by the way, for sexually active youth? It's not here's a bunch of contraception. It's here's how to get back on track. Here's how to get back on the right path. And so what we want to do is we want to absolutely take young people by the hand who've already started down the wrong path and help them get back. Research shows us that about 2/3 of sexually active teens say, I regret my choice, I wish I would have waited. We totally understand that. In a Christian community, understand the forgiveness and the grace of the mercy of God. He wants you to just come back home, like the prodigals, just come on back home. And even in a public school environment, you can start over again, yes. Very important message, thank you.
And when you're talking about success, you're not just talking about a home and a new car, vacations, etc. There's a
Yes.
spiritual dimension.
What we're saying is, yes, of course, what we're saying is here's a clear pathway forward for life formation, right? Here's how to best prepare yourself for future marriage and family is what we're talking about. So what we're talking about success is not being government dependent, for example, right? Having a healthy family structure is what we're talking about, yes.
All right. A couple questions back here.
Back where?
Okay, way in the back.
Okay, Ann.
We talked a lot today about this generation maybe putting education first and work first and delaying marriage. But before marriage comes dating. So my question has to do a little bit about healthy dating. Christian circles often teach that dating is you date for the purpose of marriage. Is it okay to date if you're not sure if you want to marry this person, if you're not going to marry this person? You know, what is healthy dating and how can we promote healthy dating that will, of course, lead to a healthy marriage?
Yes, well, it's a little bit tricky because you know the whole I kiss dating goodbye controversy and all of that. What happened was there was a very, very strong push toward that whole, the courtship thing, which I don't think was completely misguided. The way that we put it in the workbook, in the Excel book, is we say it's okay not to date. So it's okay to wait until you're pursuing marriage. But in terms of healthy dating relationships, yeah, I mean, I just don't have time to get into all the components of that. I just feel like it's a big topic to try to jump into right now. But yeah, we need to help our young people with healthy dating relationships. Obviously, it starts off, I think Brad talked a little bit about this, right? It's getting to know you, spending time together, you know? And I think for singles, for young singles, what my encouragement is, and I think Brad already said this, is, you get involved in serving the Lord. And what you're going to do is, as you're serving the Lord, you look over and there's somebody next to you also serving the Lord. And that's, the Lord tends to merge those streams together, So, yeah, it's a big question that I just feel like is bigger than I have time to really explode right now.
Hi, right here.
Hi.
I have a question about your curriculum being in public schools. You mentioned that you travel Illinois, that you've taught the success sequence in public schools. I'm just curious what the reception has been, given the fact that Illinois is notorious for some of the most radical sex education.
Well, what you're really talking about is Chicago. Yeah. We are persona non grata in Chicago, which is very unfortunate. We started off this program in Chicago. We were in CPS all over the place, and we've essentially been kicked out. Cease and desist. So we cannot be in Chicago. What the sex ed program you're talking about is, and there's some good news here. SB 818 a few years ago that passed the National Sex Ed Standards is a radical sex education plan. It's basically taking the Chicago public school sex ed program and pushing it out on the rest of the state. The good news is most of the state rejected it. Okay? Numbers aren't fresh in my head right now, but something like 800 schools, school districts, 500 plus rejected it. Which doesn't mean that 200 accepted it. They basically said nothing. There was only about 30 that accepted it. So my point is, yes, the National Sex Ed Standards are radical. They were adopted by the State Assembly, but as only a recommendation. It's being taught basically in Chicago in some areas, but most of the schools around the state are common sense. This makes sense. Like I showed earlier, popular support. I showed you the map of where we are. We're in schools all over because it's a common sense, beautiful thing. And they're like, yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Now, could churches teach what you're advocating?
They should. No, seriously, yeah. And that's why we're working on the video curriculum, because the workbook format of Excel just doesn't really seem to work. I mean, I've been trying for 20 years, it doesn't work. So now, it only took me 20 years to figure out this doesn't work. So the workbook thing doesn't seem to work well for the church. I'm just uncle, all right? So now what we're doing is developing a new video curriculum that we think will work very well for the church.
All right.
Yeah.
How can people here connect? Follow?
Stop by our booth, grab a card, a QR code. Again, if you want to come to one of our seminars, we'll do this. We can do this all day long, people. And we do. And so you can come, you can bring people, but if you have a school teacher or an administrator, particularly Christian school, public school, doesn't matter, send them. We would love to talk to them, love to get them hooked up. So once again, I want to say a big thank you to David, Illinois Family Institute. And
let's say a big thank you to Scott Phelps.